You know, there's a specific kind of comfort that comes from living in a safe neighborhood. You see the manicured lawns, the motion sensor lights on every garage, the ring cameras on every doorbell, and you start to think that crime has a zip code and you don't live in it. That was exactly my mindset when I was 17. We lived just outside of Boulder, Colorado. It was one of those places where the houses are huge, spaced far apart, and back up into dense patches of pine forest. It was quiet, the kind of quiet where a car door slam sounds like a gunshot. It was a Tuesday in late October. My parents had been invited to an anniversary dinner for my dad's law firm, which meant they were going to be gone until at least midnight. The layout of our house is important for you to understand what happened. The living room is at the back of the house, with floor-to-ceiling glass sliding doors that look out onto the backyard and the tree line beyond it. When it's dark out and the lights are on inside, those windows turn into black mirrors. You can't see out, but anyone standing in the yard has a front row seat to everything you're doing. Around 9:30 p.m., the wind started to pick up. It wasn't a storm, just those heavy gusts that rattle the gutters and make the trees groan. I had just finished a slice of pepperoni when the motion sensor light on the back deck clicked on. It flooded the backyard with this harsh white LED light. I froze. My eyes went straight to the glass. Usually it's a deer or maybe a stray cat. I waited for the light to click off. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. It stayed on. I paused the TV. The silence in the house was heavy. I walked over to the sliding glass door and cupped my hands against the glass to block the reflection, squinting into the yard. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the deck furniture, the gas grill, the edge of the woods. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It's just the wind, I thought. The wind moved a branch and triggered the sensor. I turned away from the glass to go back to the couch, and that's when I heard it. It was like a fingernail against glass, and it came from right behind me. I spun around. The yard was empty. The light was still blazing, casting long, sharp shadows against the house. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Then I saw him. He wasn't on the deck. He was standing about 20 feet back, right at the edge of the tree line where the light began to fade into darkness. He was perfectly still. He was wearing dark clothing, and he was just watching. My brain couldn't process it for a second. It was like a glitch in reality. Why is there a man standing in my backyard? Is it a neighbor? Is he lost? Then he took one step forward into the light and he raised his hand. He waved, but it wasn't a friendly wave. It was slow, mocking. That broke the trance. I dropped to the floor, crawling behind the kitchen island so he couldn't see me anymore. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely unlock my phone. I dialed 911.
911, what is your emergency?
There's a man in my backyard. I'm alone. He's staring at me.
Okay, honey, what's your address?
Please hurry. He's coming toward the house.
I have officers in the area. We're dispatching a unit now. Is the house locked?
Yes, everything is locked.
Okay, I want you to go to a room with a lock, away from the windows, and stay on the line with me until the officers arrive.
I scrambled up the stairs, my socks slipping on the hardwood. I ran into my parents' bedroom because it had a heavy deadbolt on the door and a view of the driveway. I locked myself in, sat in the corner of the closet, and just listened. Downstairs, I heard a heavy thud.
I think he's trying to get in. I heard a noise.
Police are 2 minutes out. Just stay put.
2 minutes felt like 2 hours. Every creak of the house settling sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind sounded like a door opening. I was clutching a heavy brass candlestick I'd grabbed from the hallway table, ready to swing at anything that came through that door. Then I saw the lights. Through the slats of the blinds in my parents' room, I saw headlights wash over the driveway. I peeked out. It was a dark sedan, but it had a spotlight mounted on the side. A police cruiser. I have never felt relief like that in my entire life. It was physical, like a weight physically dropping off my shoulders. I saw a tall man get out of the car. He was wearing a standard police uniform, dark blue shirt, patches on the sleeves. He had a flashlight in his hand, sweeping the front yard.
I'm going down to let him in.
Make sure he identifies himself.
The dispatcher warned, but I was already moving. I just wanted this to be over. I ran downstairs, turning on the foyer lights as I went. I got to the front door and looked through the peephole. The officer was standing there on the porch. He looked young, maybe late 20s, clean-shaven. He looked concerned.
Police department, is everything okay in there?
I undid the top lock, but I kept the chain on. I cracked the door open just a few inches.
Thank God. He was in the backyard. He was watching me.
The officer nodded, shining his flashlight around the porch area, then clicking it off.
It's okay, miss. I checked the perimeter before I came to the door. I didn't see anyone in the yard, but the back gate was open. He probably took off as soon as he saw the cruiser pull up.
I slumped against the doorframe with relief.
I do need to come inside briefly, though. I found a broken window screen on the side of the garage. I need to do a quick sweep of the interior, make sure he didn't slip in before I got here. Standard procedure.
It made perfect sense. If there was a broken screen, someone could be inside. The thought of being in the house with the intruder while the cop drove away was terrifying. I reached up to slide the chain lock out of its track. My hand was shaking as I grabbed the little metal knob. The officer was standing close to the door, waiting. The porch light was bright, illuminating him clearly. As I struggled with the chain, I looked down, and my heart stopped. I froze. My brain tried to process what I was seeing, trying to make it fit with the narrative of safety I had built in the last 30 seconds. The uniform looked weird. The belt looked real. The patch said Boulder Police. But his pants, they were dark blue, but they were too short. They didn't break over the boots correctly. It looked like he was wearing someone else's pants, and the boots were hiking boots, freshly caked with mud. Not something you'd ever see a policeman wearing with his uniform. A cold wave of nausea hit me so hard I almost gagged. I looked at his chest. The badge was there, silver and shiny, but it was clipped onto his shirt pocket crookedly. I looked up at his face. He was smiling. But now that I was really looking, the smile didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were wide, too wide. He was staring at the chain lock with an intensity that was hungry.
Is the chain stuck?
The tone of his voice had changed. I slowly pulled my hand away from the chain.
The dispatcher told me not to open the door until a second unit arrives.
It was a lie, a desperate, clumsy lie. The officer's smile vanished instantly. It didn't fade, it just dropped off his face like a mask falling to the floor.
Open the door, Chloe.
He knew my name. I hadn't told him my name. I had only given the dispatcher my address. He threw his entire body weight against the wood. I screamed and slammed the door shut, fumbling to throw the deadbolt back into place. The door shuddered violently as he rammed it again. Boom! The wood around the frame splintered. I scrambled backward, slipping on the rug, scrambling on my hands and feet like a crab to get away from the door. Boom! The top hinge groaned. He was going to get in. He was going to break the door down, and he was going to kill me. I turned and ran toward the kitchen, grabbing a knife from the block, knowing it wouldn't be enough. I could hear him kicking the door now, over and over. Then, suddenly, the kicking stopped. Silence. I stood in the kitchen, knife shaking in my hand, waiting for the sound of glass breaking or the back door smashing open. But instead, I heard sirens. Not the faint wail of a siren miles away, but the deafening, chirping yelp of a police siren right in my driveway. Blue and red lights exploded through the front windows, dancing across the walls. I heard shouting outside.
Freeze! Get on the ground, now!
I collapsed onto the kitchen floor and just sobbed. It took the real police 10 minutes to convince me to open the door. I wouldn't do it until I saw 3 officers and a sergeant through the window. They caught him. He had made it halfway to the woods before a K-9 unit took him down. When they searched his car, the dark sedan he had parked in my driveway to look like an undercover cruiser, they found the body of a real police officer in the trunk. He had been ambushed during a traffic stop 3 miles down the road about 20 minutes earlier. The man in my backyard, the man who watched me through the glass, he hadn't just found a uniform, he had hunted for it. He killed a cop, stripped him, and drove to my house specifically for me. After this incident, I will never open the door for anyone wearing a badge unless they fully identify themselves. You think you know your family, you grow up with them, you see them at Thanksgiving, you exchange awkward Christmas gifts. But everyone has a secret room in their head that they keep locked tight. My Uncle Stan, he had a whole attic full of them. Stan was the quiet one. He was my dad's older brother, a lifelong bachelor and churchgoer who lived in the same clapboard house my grandparents bought in the 50s. He worked at the water treatment plant for 30 years, retired quietly, and spent his weekends tinkering with old electronics. He was boring. When I was a kid, he'd slip me a $20 bill and pat me on the head, and that was about the extent of our interaction. When he died of a massive heart attack last month, nobody was really surprised. He lived alone, ate poorly, and didn't exercise. Since I was the only family member currently unemployed and living in the state, the job of cleaning out his house fell to me. The first 2 floors were exactly what you'd expect. Old newspapers, shelves full of Tom Clancy novels, a fridge full of expired condiments. It was sad, but normal. Then I got to the attic. It was a scorching hot Saturday. The air up there was thick enough to chew on, smelling like baked dust. It was crammed with the usual junk: broken lamps, boxes of my dad's old comic books, holiday decorations covered in mouse droppings. I was shoving a stack of water-damaged cardboard boxes toward the stairs when I saw something. Way back, hidden behind a rolled-up rug that looked like it hadn't moved in forever, was a green military-style footlocker. I thought I had stumbled onto some old hoard or inheritance. It was locked, but the padlock was rusted almost through. One good whack with a hammer popped it open. Inside, it wasn't gold or old Playboy magazines. It was video equipment. There was a heavy, shoulder-mounted Panasonic camcorder from the early 90s, the kind that used full-sized VHS tapes. Underneath the camera were rows and rows of black tapes, all neatly labeled with white adhesive strips. Stan's handwriting was neat, almost architectural. The labels were boring. Spring 94, Town Parade 97, Lake Trip with Dave. I don't know why I didn't just throw them in the dumpster pile. Maybe it was nostalgia. I thought I might see my dad when he was younger, or see myself running around in the background of a parade. I hauled a small TV and an old VCR up from the living room, sweating through my t-shirt. I plugged everything into a questionable extension cord. I grabbed the tape labeled Town Parade 97. I popped it in. The VCR whirred with that nostalgic, mechanical, chunky sound. Static. Then a wobbly, grainy shot of Main Street. It was exactly what it said: floats, high school marching bands, kids scrambling for candy. It was boring. I was about to eject it when I noticed something. The camera work changed. It stopped panning across the crowd and zoomed in, tight. It focused on a woman standing on the sidewalk. She was maybe 30, blonde hair in a ponytail, wearing a denim jacket. The camera just held on her. For 2 minutes straight. She was laughing at something off-screen, totally unaware she was being filmed. The frame shook a little, like Stan was trying hard to keep his hands steady. It felt invasive, like I was watching something I wasn't supposed to see. I removed it. Maybe Stan was just a lonely guy who had a crush. Creepy, yeah, but harmless. I dug deeper into the footlocker. At the very bottom, underneath a layer of foam padding, I found 3 more tapes. These didn't have neat white labels. They just had dates scrawled on them in black marker. October 14th, 1998. I put it in. This one wasn't filmed during the day. The footage was dark, grainy, and green. Night vision. The camera was stationary. It was set up outside, looking through the window of a house. It was a kitchen. A family was sitting down to dinner. A mom, a dad, 2 little kids. They were laughing, passing bowls of food. I felt a cold spike of adrenaline in my stomach. Stan was in someone's bushes. The audio was awful. Just the roar of wind in the microphone, and every once in a while, a sharp intake of breath right behind the camera. I watched for 10 minutes. Nothing happened. Just a family eating dinner, being watched by my boring Uncle Stan. I felt sick. I was about to turn it off when the camera suddenly jerked downward, showing the grass, and then cut to static. My hands were shaking now. I sat in that boiling hot attic, freezing cold. I should have called the police right then. I know that now. But I had to know what was on the next tape. The next one was dated just 3 days later. October 17th, 1998. It was the same kitchen, but the angle was different. The camera was inside the house now. It was low to the ground. It looked like it was sitting on the kitchen counter. The room was dark, lit only by the digital clock on the microwave. It was 3:17 a.m. The house was dead silent. The audio picked up the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of the cameraman's breathing. It was slow, rhythmic, excited. Then a floorboard creaked upstairs. The camera jerked toward the doorway. A shadow moved in the hall. A woman walked into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. It was the mom from the previous video. She was wearing an oversized t-shirt. She walked right past the camera toward the sink for a glass of water. She didn't see him. He must have been standing in the corner, in the pitch black, holding the camera. She turned around, glass to her lips, and froze. She dropped the glass. It shattered on the linoleum. Her eyes went wide in the night vision glow. A voice came from behind the camera. It was my Uncle Stan's voice, but it wasn't the dry, boring voice I knew. It was a low, guttural whisper. Shh. The tape cut to black. I scrambled backward, knocking over the stack of tapes. I couldn't breathe. The heat in the attic felt suffocating. My quiet Uncle Stan. The guy who gave me $20 for Christmas. There was one tape left at the bottom of the trunk. No date, just a single letter written on it in Sharpie. H. I didn't want to watch it. Every instinct in my body told me to run out of that house and never look back. But I put it in the VCR. There was no static this time. It just snapped straight to the image. It was a close-up. Extreme close-up. It was a woman's face. Her eyes were taped shut with duct tape. There was duct tape across her mouth. She was shaking violently. I could hear her whimpering behind the tape. The camera zoomed out slowly. She was tied to a wooden chair in what looked like a basement. Concrete walls, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. I recognized the basement. I recognized the stains on the concrete wall behind her. It was the basement of this house. The basement I just walked through to get to the attic stairs. Stan stepped into the frame. He was wearing yellow rubber gloves, the kind you use for washing dishes. He stood behind the chair and gently stroked the woman's hair. It was the blonde woman from the parade video, the one from the denim jacket. He leaned in close to her ear. The camera microphone picked up his whisper perfectly this time. "You're so much prettier when you're quiet, Heather." I slammed the stop button. I ripped the VCR cord out of the wall. I sat there gasping for air, staring at the blank TV screen. And then a memory hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I was 12 years old. The whole town was terrified because a woman named Heather Jenkins had vanished on her way home from a late shift at the diner. They searched for weeks. They dragged the river. They interviewed everyone. I remember Stan coming over for dinner during that time. I remember him sitting at our kitchen table, eating pot roast, shaking his head as my dad talked about how dangerous the world was getting. I remember him saying, "It's a shame, a real shame what happened to that poor girl." They never found Heather Jenkins. I called the police. They came, they saw the tapes, and they turned the house into a crime scene. They found things in the walls of the basement that I don't want to talk about. Things that confirmed that Heather wasn't the only one. The cops told me Stan was likely active for over 20 years. 20 years of being the quiet neighbor, the boring uncle, the guy nobody looked at twice. I keep thinking about how many times I was alone in a room with him. And I wonder, if I hadn't been the one to clean out his house, how long would those tapes have sat there in the dark, waiting for someone to press play? If you enjoyed this story, if it creeped you out even a little, hit the like button and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you think. You can check out other stories about haunted places, real encounters, and Home Alone horrors with the links here, or from visiting my channel. The Yaksha Files will be back soon with another case